So yeah, writing was a key innovation, really. I mean, we wouldn't have written history without writing. So when you see here, opens up a lot of new possibilities. One I didn't mention yet was the idea of implementing a law code, a uniform code of laws uh, that matches, crimes with penalties in a predictable and reliable and fair manner. This might seem like common sense, but before Hammurabi's code of laws, for example, and around 1800 BC in ancient Babylon, rulers, chieftains, they would just decide on a case-by-case basis, what the punishment should be for a crime, what a crime was. So there was not necessarily any consistency between one case or the other, not necessarily any guarantee that you as a citizen would be safe and behaving this way or that. And no way of knowing really what the penalties would be for something, but with a uniform code of laws that you can write down, it makes life and law a little bit more predictable. And from there you can start thinking philosophically about ethics, about what is right or wrong in the grand scheme of things. So this is kind of here the what we might call the classical era. These kind of technologies like philosophy, drama, currency came about anywhere between 1000 BC to 1 AD, the time of ancient Greece, the ancient Roman Republic, and so on. And then afterwards we get into what we might call the medieval era. Some of these technologies include things like engineering, learning how to construct tall buildings like the Notre Dame Cathedral, learning how to construct trebuchets, right? Medieval technologies might include machinery, learning how to build lumber mills, windmills, water mills, crossbowmen. Let's see, what else do we have here? The rise of Christianity and more complex theological thoughts under people such as Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine. The rise of feudalism. All right, let me explain feudalism for a second. So, I'm not sure how popular the term is nowadays among historians, but it was especially popular back when Marxist history used to be prevalent in the 1960s in university history programs. The basic idea of feudalism is it's a system of reciprocal obligations between higher and lower orders. So you have the higher orders, kings and lords that provide military protection from other kings and lords that would like to come plunder your lands, and you as a peasant or as a serf, in return for that protection, owe them a large part of your food output. So it's kind of a way of taxing, or you might say exploiting, farmers for some of their surplus in exchange for protecting them. And lords and kings, the way that they saw to get ahead in life was not so much to develop the productivity of land so much as rather just conquer more land and more peasants and have more land and peasants to exploit, so that you could hire more knights, for example, to go fight for you. Knights in the medieval era were not just a military unit. This is kind of a common misconception, but knights were actually a social class in between powerful lords and the lowly peasants. Knights were people who had enough wealth to own their own horses, and they were permanently employed by the lords to fight on their behalf. They were accorded certain privileges. They would often have servants accompanying them, squires and other slightly lower orders that might hope to work themselves up to knighthood. So they were kind of a middle rank. So it's pretty much the medieval era. Civil service. Civil service is just the idea of having professional bureaucrats manage your government. Might help. In the Middle Ages, swamps were often cleared for larger cultivation by these, government, more organized government programs. The Dutch, for example, built levees and dikes to keep out the sea from flooding their lands during the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages. Education, the idea of universities was an idea that became prevalent during the Middle Ages, not just in Europe, but in the Middle East as well, in the Islamic world. The Islamic world was a very prevalent seat of higher learning during the Middle Ages. And not many people realize that. It might not seem so obvious now when we sometimes associate the Middle East and the Islamic world with turning their back on modern learning. But at the time, they were at the forefront of modern learning in the Middle Ages. You had things like written music, paper, originating in the medieval era, the Middle Ages. Paper, along with the printing press, were inventions that Europe borrowed from the Chinese, as well as gunpowder. So actually, China was at the forefront of a lot of these technological developments in this sort of late medieval, early Renaissance era. Because now we're getting into what we might call the Renaissance era. We get things like economics, liberalism, a lot of what we might call Enlightenment thought. People questioning the old way of doing things, coming up with new theories of justifying rule, instead of just saying, oh, whoever has the strongest army should rule, or whoever is appointed by God should rule. You're saying that rulers need the consent of the people in order to rule. That's an idea that starts becoming more prevalent during especially the late Renaissance. Also, the idea that people are bound together into nations. All right, how is nationhood different from what came before? Because I think we are used to the common sense idea that we belong to a nation. The America as a nation, Germany as a nation, France as a nation, and so on. Well, what does a nation have in common? Well, usually nations have a language in common, a similar history that they all know about, some cultural elements, but for a lot of human history, people didn't put as much stock in those sorts of things. Their loyalty tended to be fixated on much smaller groups like the extended family, right, the tribe. So, before the idea of being loyal to your nation, most societies were much more comfortable with the idea of pledging loyalty first and foremost to your closest relatives. I will fight for my brother and sister and mother and father and children and cousins, and to heck with the people in the neighboring village who aren't a part of my tribe, who are trying to harm my extended family. Perhaps we will go to war with them to punish some sort of wrong that they have committed against our family. Middle Ages is it's the word. It's right in the word itself, feudalism. The first part of that word is the word feud. If you ever watched that show Family Feud back in the early 90s, I remember seeing that as a kid. A feud is basically just a long-running